Let's be honest. Is this a comic book version of a presidential campaign?
It's not a comic book, and it's not a very nicely asked question the way you say that. Larry Kudlow, as an example, who I have a lot of respect for, loves my tax plan.
I talked to economic advisors who have served presidents of both parties. They said that you have as much chance of cutting taxes that much without increasing the deficit as you would of flying away from that podium by flapping your arms really high.
Then you have to get rid of Larry Kudlow, who sits on your panel, who's a great guy, who came out the other day and said, I love Trump's tax plan.
Well,
John Harwood.
Go ahead, well, actually, who would you like to talk right now? Okay, if you've been paying attention today, then you know John Harwood is coming under fire for calling Trump a comic candidate. Ted Cruz also had a few issues with the moderators. Take a look at this.
The questions that have been asked so far in this debate illustrate why the American people don't trust the media. And you look at the questions. Donald Trump, are you a comic book villain? Ben Carson, can you do math? John Kasich, will you insult two people over here? Marco Rubio, why don't you resign? Jeb Bush, why have your numbers fallen? How about talking about the substantive issues people care about? The contrast with the Democratic debate, where every fawning question from the media was, which of you is more handsome and wise? That debate reflected a debate between the Bolsheviks and the Mensheviks.
Well, except for that last sentence, I actually have to agree. That, of course, was Senator Ted Cruz last night, pointing out what most observers believe to be the obvious. And that is that the questions from CNBC moderators Becky Quick, John Harwood, and Carl Quintanilla were a bit ridiculous at best and downright rude at worst. Certainly they were, for the most part, not designed to shed light on the candidate's knowledge and respective philosophies of the economy, as was supposed to be the case. Indeed, so bad was the line of inquiry that even liberal Bill Maher thought the questions were dopey. Here's what he tweeted. Oh my God, did I just hear Ted Cruz say something awesome that I agree with? Yes. The media is even stupider than the polls. Who's on first? Got to agree with him, man. Joe, you're a media expert. What's your take? How did this happen last night?
Bad preparation for starters. I'll start with Becky Quick. She asked a question of Trump. Says, you say that Mark Zuckerberg is, I'm sorry, that Marco Rubio is Mark Zuckerberg's, the founder of Facebook's, favorite senator. And then Trump says, where'd you get that?
I didn't say that.
Yeah, I didn't say
Except
that.
that he did.
That's the thing, right?
And she didn't know where.
That's the thing. He then asked, what's your source, basically? And she said, well, I know I must have read that somewhere. It's very simple. In your notes that you've had weeks to prepare for. It's source, Trump website.
Unbelievable and unforgivable. What did you think, Gail?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, John is a partisan hack, and hackers are going to hack, as they say. So when you look at the performance that he put forward, that he could not even ask questions that were respectful and objective, you got to ask the hard questions, because whoever the Republicans choose as their candidate to go against Hillary has got to be someone who can stand up to hard questioning. But this stuff is just circus.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm going to disagree with you on John Harwood in terms of being a hack. I actually think he's better than that. However, it was not his place as a moderator to bring that kind of bias to the debate. I can't wait to hear what Nomi has to say about this.
I think that there's a stark difference between bias, and I talked about this earlier today on a different show. There's a difference between bias and there's a difference between unprofessional. I agree 100%. They came in and they were pundits. They were not journalists. Yeah. They were not moderators. They weren't like Anderson Cooper, who had his facts ready when people started to challenge him on the facts and quipped back.
When you're a pundit, aren't you therefore biased because you're offering an opinion instead of asking a question?
Possibly, but these are business pundits. They're not political pundits. They really didn't understand.
Well, that was
their
crystal
politics.
clear, wasn't it?
Very clear. Yeah, but in terms of bias, this is a network that in part is responsible for creating the Tea Party. So if the Republicans want to say that this was a liberal bias, I don't buy it. I just think that they were trying to get ratings. This is a great opportunity for them to get numbers, and it was sensationalized way before the debate even started.
Which is why they'd rather try and start fights as opposed to actually talking about something. Let's bring in Tim Graham, who's the Director of Media Analysis with the Media Research Council, and get his viewpoint. Tim, welcome.
Thank you.
So I want to ask you what you thought of last night's debate. I got a pretty good idea what I'm going to hear, though.
Well, it was remarkably personal. I think when we looked through the transcript this morning and we tried to figure out how many of these questions sort of ended with a jab, it's about 2/3 of these questions ended with "You're not plausible. You're a comic book candidate." These kinds of insults, frankly. I think that the questions could have been substantive if they'd finished where they started. You know, like they asked Cruz, you know, the House and the Senate passed a budget deal that the president will sign, and then, okay, that's factual. And then it's like, but you're obviously not the kind of leader people want. You know, I mean, that was not a question. It was an insult.
Hey,
and that's where they went wrong. They could have made that substantive. They could have said, why do you object to this? And you would have gotten off to a decent substantive start. It's not what they did. I mean, it seemed like they felt it was their job to insult them all, instead of just...
Tim, let me get Joe in on this because we don't have a lot of time. Go ahead,
Tim,
Joe.
we're about a minute until the break, but we're going to keep you through if that's okay with you. What I'm seeing now, Tim, is a cross between business and journalism, where these debates are very good business for these networks. Last night, CNBC was charging $250,000 for a 30-second spot. Fox had 24 million viewers. CNN had 23 million viewers for the last two GOP debates. All that said, CNBC had a record audience for them. They got about 14, 15 million viewers. So is it a sense of that you have to sensationalize this to make it more interesting for mainstream people watching?
And Tim, I'm going to ask you to hold your answer for the next segment because we're running out of time.
Give me time to think about it.
We want to keep you. We'll give you time to think about that, and we'll come back to you in a minute if that's okay. All right. So how would all of you rate the moderators of last night's debate? I know I want to know. I think all of us have expressed how we feel about it. You can let us know what you think by going to newsmaxtv.com/comments. We're going to continue with more on last night's debate and with Tim after this. Stay with us.